So I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. Give it up for upstate, that's nice. As you know, upstate is a great place to be from. And my childhood was really wonderful by most accounts. I had two sisters that tortured me appropriately, older sisters. I had a dog. I played ball with the kids on the street. I could walk to school both ways. And my dad was an airline pilot. My mom was a teacher, so we got to travel. And I got to learn a lot about different things. And by all accounts, everything was going great. And then, one morning I woke up, and something wasn't right in the house. There was a bunch of people there I didn't know. My sister was home from college, which didn't make any sense. I'd come to find out that my dad had died of a heart attack in the night, suddenly. And a neighbor eventually told me that I was now the man of the house, whatever that meant. I was 11 years old. So, as you might imagine, things didn't really go that great when I was a teenager. But one thing that went pretty well was I developed a love for rock music. Now this was the 80s, and if you can picture this, I had big 80s hair. I had living on a prayer hair. And I had a big 80s attitude to match. I didn't fit in that well with the other kids in school. I didn't fit in with the preps or the jocks or the smart kids for sure. The teachers said I was a troublemaker, and they were pretty much right. So I packed all my things in my car and I drove to Los Angeles to become famous. Now, living in LA and trying to make it as a musician was pretty hard. It's hard to make ends meet. There was a lot of times when I had food, it was crappy food. When I had a car, it was a crappy car. I got evicted from several crappy apartments. But on those occasions when I got to go on stage and I got to play songs that I wrote, I felt powerful. I didn't feel like a hero. I didn't feel like a star, but I was doing what I wanted to do, and that felt really good. For a while. And then at some point, things started to change. It was getting old. I was getting old. And I felt like the choices I'd made really limited my life. Everybody was moving on, and I was afraid I was going to end up being a wedding singer. The only other thing I loved as much as music was aviation. So I decided I'd go back to school and become an airline pilot like my father. And that's exactly what I did. Eventually I became a captain, flying at Delta Connection. I was based in Boston. Anybody Boston? Little Boston? Okay. So it was a great city. I was living in a place I loved. I had great friends. And it was a great job, and it was amazing, right? Because now I was captain. It was very different than being a musician. For starters, I could pay for stuff. The other thing was people respected me, and they were nice to me, and they wanted to know my opinion about things, and they would listen. It was pretty cool. I didn't feel like a hero. I didn't feel like a star, but when I got on that runway and got ready for takeoff, I was doing what I wanted to do, and it felt really good. And then, this one morning, we were taxiing out in Newark. Now, for those of you that don't know about Newark, imagine if you had like a beautiful little cousin, and she grew up to be a stripper. That's kind of how Manhattan feels about Newark. So we're taxiing out of Newark. And the cool thing about this is, number one, that means pretty soon we're going to get to leave Newark. And number two, when you taxi out of Newark, if you're taking off to the north, as we were on this particular day, you get this amazing view of lower Manhattan, that beautiful skyline. And so I was looking forward to that, and I was flying with this great crew. This young woman named Nia, who was a friend of mine that I knew from flight school, and she had worked really hard to get that job, and she loved it. I loved flying with her. And then my friend Debbie. Now, Debbie was a character from Providence, Rhode Island, went by Deb. She's about 5'2", brassy blonde hair, and a thick Providence accent. She swore like a sailor, and she's just a lot of fun to be around. So we were all looking forward to this trip. It's a great day, beautiful morning. We're heading out to Boston, and everything felt great, except that something was wrong. Now, as we turned to take the runway, we were number 1 for takeoff, and we got on the runway, and there's that beautiful view of South Manhattan. And a beautiful blue sky, the bluest autumn sky you ever saw in your life, just a clear day. And smoke trailing down from the World Trade Center. Now that smoke was a distraction, but we had a job to do. We're on a hot runway. We're number 1 for takeoff. We have a checklist we need to run. So we got the airplane ready to take off, but it was hard to not look at that smoke. And then Nia said to me, "Shye, what's that?" And I looked out the window and I saw what looked like an airplane sort of careening through the smoke, going up and down. And I wasn't sure what it was doing, and I said something that now seems ridiculous. I said, "You know, maybe it's one of those firefighting airplanes like they have out west, going to put out the fire at the World Trade Center." And she said, yeah, maybe that's what it is. Except I was wrong. And we watched as that airplane slammed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center and exploded. And Nia screamed, and at that very moment, they cleared us for takeoff. Now, I didn't have a lot of time to think, but we were on a hot runway, we were cleared for takeoff, and apparently New York was under attack. So I punched it, and we got the hell out of there. But after we got to a safe altitude, I was still trying to process what we had seen, but I knew one thing for sure, and I knew what we saw was not an accident. So I said, "Nia, you know what? I need you to fly the airplane for a little bit. Can you do that?" And she said yes, and she did. And I called back to Deb on the flight phone to see what was going on in the cabin. I hit the button, ding, nothing happens. Hit the button again, ding, nothing happens. I'm starting to get a little bit nervous. Finally, the phone picks up. It's Deb. "Oh my God, these fuckers in their orange juice. What is it with these people in the fucking orange juice? They think we're on the fucking orange grove here? You think they've ever seen a fucking orange before? Everybody wants oranges. I don't even think I have enough juice on this fucking airplane." Deb? Hey, can we just forget about the orange juice for a second? I kind of need you to come up here for a minute. "Whatever, I'll be right up." Click. Deb comes up front. It was pretty clear from our conversation that she didn't know what was going on. The passengers didn't know what was going on. So I told her what I think we saw, and she goes, "Oh my God, I heard her scream." And I said, "Yeah. Look, I need you to go in back and just secure the cabin. I don't want anybody getting up. And if you see anything that looks even a little bit suspicious, I want you to call me right away." She said, "Okay, I'll do that." So about this time, they were starting to land all the airplanes at the nearest airports that you could land at. And I was trying to negotiate because in that moment, all I cared about was the safety of the passengers on board and my crew. And I just wanted more than anything to get everybody to Boston. And we were only 100 miles out. So after a little bit of begging and pleading and pushing that airplane a little bit faster than it was maybe designed to go, they reluctantly agreed. And it turns out that we were the very last airplane to land at Boston Logan on September 11th, 2001. Now after that, things got a little weird. When I went to work, it was like the whole country had lost its mind a little bit. I was no longer respected as a captain. People didn't ask my opinion. In fact, I was profiled for being maybe ambiguously brown, having a little bit of a funny name. Even in my airline outfit, they were suspicious. And they would take apart all my bags in front of all the passengers who would now look at me like maybe I was a little bit suspicious too. And they would take things away. Important things, dangerous things. They would take my razor blades that I would shave with, and they would take my nail clippers. Now here's something that you might not know. Every airliner has a very important piece of equipment on the flight deck. We have a crash axe. Now, what this axe is designed for is if there's ever an accident and the pilots need to get out, they have an axe that they can use to make sure they can escape. Do you understand what I just told you? Let me put this in context for you. On the flight deck of the airplane, we have an axe. It's a fucking axe with a pointy fucking head on it, designed to rip through the cabin in case we crash and we need to get out. Okay? But these same agents that somehow allowed the 9/11 hijackers to come through Boston only weeks before, they took my razor blades and my nail clippers to keep our country safe from the evildoers. I gotta tell you, after that, things got a little weird for me. I stayed with it for a little while, but ultimately, I knew it was time to move on, and I flew my last flight in 2007. I think ultimately, every decision that we make really comes down to two choices. Should I stay, or should I go? Which, by the way, is also an 80s rock song. And I think when these random acts of violence happen that are so devastating, the problem is that they take away something from us that is so fundamentally human. They take away our freedom of choice. They take away our free will. That's why it's so violating. And you don't know where you're going to be when that wrecking ball comes, but it's going to come. And the issue isn't what it takes away. The issue is what it leaves behind. The residue that it leaves behind and what to do about that. At ground zero, smoke rose from that hole for 100 days. It was 5 more months just in the initial cleanup. It was years to figure out what to do with our missing towers, that phantom limb in our Manhattan skyline that was gone. So, I have never been able to really quite make a lot of sense of that loss. But I have found strength in defiant perseverance. The ability to find calm in chaos. The ability to find comedy in tragedy. The ability to find love in hatred. And it's an orientation that helps me understand what's important every day. What I can do for other people and not just myself. And I don't feel like a hero. I don't feel like a star. But it's something I try to do every day. And it feels good. Thank you.